Hello, everybody, and welcome into this week's episode of the Love and Lightning podcast. I am LA Campbell and happy to welcome you into our bi-monthly discussion of all things spiritual and interesting and unique. So today we're going to actually talk about an interesting topic that really deals with the mind, body, spirit connection. And we're going to look at why why there are times when our bodies actually reject healing, which is an interesting, I think is an interesting topic because I see this clinically with people sometimes, but I've also kind of experienced myself from a personal angle when I was insisting that I was healing. And then in fact, my body was rejecting all kinds of things. So we're going to kind of get into the deep weeds on this one and just see the kind of interesting information. Before we get going, let's have Maestra Paula Leeper come in and open the sacred circle for us.
Welcome, everyone. Just take a nice deep breath. If you're driving, keep your eyes open. If you're not driving, go ahead and close your eyes. And we're going to invite in the energies from each of the cardinal directions. From the east, we are inviting in our light. The light from Creator, the light from the cosmic Lord. We're inviting in our breath, our words, our voice, our truth, our lungs, our inside wings. We're inviting in the energies of the West, a place of letting go, the place of our hearts, the place of our fire, the place of our grandmothers. We ask for them to walk with us as we make some discoveries and share some knowledge and some wisdom. We're just going to ask that you whisper into our ears, what does everyone need to hear today? From the south direction, the place of our mind, the matik energy, the place where sometimes we get too full and our minds need to be emptied. We ask for the waters to cleanse and clear. And from the north direction, the place of our spirit, place of our body, the place of our ancestors, we invite in our well ancestors to walk with us today, to help us to speak from our hearts and just to speak truth. We give our knowledge and our wisdom up to you, to Creator, to our ancestors, to the cosmic Lord. Omateo. So it is.
So it is. So where do you want to start on this topic today? Because this one's kind of an interesting one.
Well, let's kind of talk about where we're at in our lives. I am a licensed massage therapist that practices very different than mainstream. I've been studying with the indigenous healers for, well, I want to say about 20 years. So I look at the body a little differently. I look at it as a whole. We don't look at our pain or symptoms. I don't diagnose. We come in with our belief system and we have a practica and look at it from there. So that's how I'm going to look through the body.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to look at pain as a messenger, and we're going to go from there. You have a different kind of license, but you also work similarly.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be, that's what we're going to talk about, is how we view the body, how we view the spirit, the soul, the heart, our emotions. We're going to talk a little bit about how sometimes we bypass our healing, why sometimes the body rejects our healing. I don't claim to be a healer. I do stand very strong, and I can view things in your body and help you to understand them and to come to terms with maybe some words, some descriptions. Where is it at in your body? How do I feel it? Where do I feel it? What's it doing? What does it feel like? So those are some of the things we're going to talk about today.
Okay. Just from my perspective, for those of you that are new today, whether listening in on the podcast or on YouTube, a little bit about me is that I hold a license as a physical therapist. I'm a doctoral prepared physical therapist. I'm also a certified clinical hypnotherapist. And I am trained in some aspects of energy medicine, both Reiki as well as some other energy perspectives from different folks. I am also a sound healer. And I don't usually use, it's funny. You said I don't usually identify as a healer. And I used to kind of run away from that word. And then I had to realize in the last, I don't know, couple of years that what I really do is healing. And I don't know. I'm stumbling over my words because I don't know. I guess it's just the feeling because I see where you talk about seeing parts of the body. I
Mhm.
intuitively know, like, even if a patient starts talking to me or a client starts talking to me, I start to hone in on what their problem is, but I do it from a sense of clairsentience and claircognizance versus just seeing the body before I ever touch them, I guess is what I'm saying.
Mhm.
Um, and and I'm also heavily ingrained, obviously, in science because that's just the nature of my educational background. But um, I've had to learn to look at this, that there's certainly emotional reason. I think in mainstream medicine and science, meaning the Western stuff, we immediately go to this idea that we resist healing because there's something emotional that's not being addressed or something mental that's not being addressed. But I would argue that there's probably some other reasons as well, like
Mhm.
energetic blocks or um, fear of spiritual transition or things like that. So I'm I'm just going to chime in. I think today as something comes up, this is me being a little scattered today, but it is what it is. Um, because I think this is it's an important topic because sometimes what I see or as I see patients or I see clients who they start to get better, but it's very slow, it's slowly getting better, or it's not getting better in a magnitude that they were hoping for.
Mhm.
And then they start to take self ownership of that. It's sort of self-blaming. And my goal for life right now is for everybody to stop blaming themselves for everything. We've been so programmed to do that, and we need to just stop
Right.
it. We need to stop it, people. We need to stop blaming ourselves. This is all a learning process. We're all learning how to be better humans. We're learning how to be better light beings. We're learning how to be better stewards of this planet and the other beings and creatures that are here. I mean, we're learning how to be better versions of ourselves, individually and collectively. So we
Right.
got to stop blaming ourselves when there's blocks or things going on within that we haven't really addressed yet, I guess is what I was saying. So
Good.
you want to jump in with
I do. I'm going to
go
talk
fight for
about
it.
what I go through before a client steps in the room
Okay.
is I take care of me first. I make sure that I have my water. I make sure that I have fed myself. I make sure that I'm in a clear space. As if I am going to bring consciousness to someone else, I need to make sure that I'm conscious first,
Mhm.
right? So taking care of myself first, maybe giving myself a limpia, using some smoke to clear the area. I also use a fan in my room to uh, move energy around,
Mhm.
open the door, let some fresh light and some fresh air in. So that's one of the very first things that I will do before someone will get here. And then I will call in my spirit team. And one of them, I have two grandmothers that I work with. Well, I have more, but we'll just talk about two. One of them will whisper into my ear where to go, and one of them will move my hands in the way that needs to move. But before I even touch a body, there's a practica. There's a heart to heart talk. In Western medicine, we might call it an intake. I'm
Mhm.
not filling out a form. I'm going to stand or sit in front of the person. I generally place my body a little lower than their heart so that when their heart reaches out to me, that it's receptive. Body placement to me is very important. So I make sure that where I'm sitting at is comfortable for them. So then we have a heart to heart and we talk about pain and we talk about what's going on in their life. How are they eating? How are they sleeping? How are they pooping? How are they moving through their day? How are they moving through their life? What's going on? All of those things will give you clues. And then when I said I can see into the body as we're having that heart to heart talk, I can see different colors in the body. I might see areas of gray or darkness. And it's not like darkness like it's bad. It's something is dense, right? Something could be moved there. But I'm not just going to go in and say, oh, you have this, and I'm going to diagnose you with this, and you have this, and we're going to do this. That's not happening. We're going to talk about how are you feeling it? Where do you feel it? What's happening? Give it a name, give it a color. And we're going to start relating to pain in that way so that we can discover where we're at. Okay. And then move into, do you want to move it? Do you want to keep it? What's it doing for you?
Mm-hmm.
What's it teaching you? What lessons are you learning? Why is your pain there and not over there? Right? If you're having pain in your throat area, are you speaking your truth? Are you speaking up for yourself? Do you need to speak up for someone else? What's keeping it closed off? Right? So I'm not going to diagnose you with, oh, you have throat issues. Your throat chakra is off. No, I'm not putting words in your mouth. I'm going to ask you about your spirit, your body, your heart, and your mind. Those are the four energy bodies that I work with. And that's how I start. So I wanted to say all of that before we got into, oh, people come in with pain, people come in limping and they leave out dancing, and those things can happen, but it's not necessarily up to me. I'm going to create a container for the pain, and then we're going to dissect it. If you're willing, we can discover, does it have a color, a texture, a feel? Where's it at? Is it outside your body? Is it inside your body? So that's kind of the way that I like to start things. And we were talking earlier before we started recording about people that come in with pain. And that's kind of where we're going is,
Yeah.
hey, why do we have it? How can we discover it? How can we honor it? And sometimes we'll probably call this episode Why the Body Rejects Healing. Right? So let's get into that. Let's find out what happens.
Yeah. Now, in my world, because I do practice in a clinical setting, and by law, there's certain things I have to do since I'm a medical provider. I do have to go through, but I make it a point. The one thing I know for a fact that I do differently, and most rehab clinicians, when we're doing an initial examination or evaluation, there's certain components of that you have to gather legally and otherwise. Okay. But one of the things that I know that I do a little differently is I absolutely want a holistic view about all kinds of things. I don't just ask if somebody comes into me and they're complaining of hip pain. I'm not just going to talk to them about the hip and things that are related to the hip. I'm going to talk about the whole body. I'm going to look at the whole body because it's a kinetic chain. It's all related, right? And that's the physical piece of it. But one of the things I found with all of my folks with neuroimmunological conditions or autoimmune disorders, and I treat tons of that. I probably treat more of that than I do anything because I am an MS certified specialist, and I've been doing that for probably almost 20 years exclusively, or pretty close to that, maybe 15 exclusively. But I see a lot of Ehlers-Danlos now and some other related conditions. But when you get into the realm of folks with autoimmune disorders, they're symptoms are different. It's different than with musculoskeletal pain. It's more diffuse, it's more global in terms of the body. It's it's hard to quantify a lot of times. Whereas somebody, if, if they have a hip problem, they can come and say, "Oh, my hip hurts here," and then they can point right here. No, right there. So it's like it's easier to go in, and then it's just a test and measures to differentially diagnose what structure is really involved and things like that, and then moving that into the global. But when somebody comes in with autoimmune disorders, they can't quantify it a lot of the time, because sometimes it's the body interprets stimuli differently, and that's kind of a technical thing to say. But the one thing that I am very clear about with those types of conditions is that they're so sensitive to different stimuli, different energy, different things. And by stimuli, I mean sensory things, like what they see, what they hear, what they smell, what they taste,
Mhm,
vibration. Um, they'll pick up all kinds of stuff. And a lot of them tend to be very empathic to begin with and don't know
mhm.
it and don't know it.
Yeah,
And I literally got to the point, even in a Western medical setting, a hospital setting, where if I, because me being empathic and me being approaching all of this way, I'd finally just get to the point and say, "Okay, just a moment. We're going to stop the physical therapy piece of this, and I need to ask you a question that has nothing to do with this." And then I would start in by saying, "Do you feel like you're a very sensitive person to energies?" Oh, and I'm telling you, 95% of the time it's like, "Oh yeah. Oh yeah."
yeah,
And it's
yeah.
like, "Okay, so now let's factor all of that in and understand what's going on." And I think that's true with just about all autoimmune disorders. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that. But starting to address that, then it can't just be about the obvious way we treat things. We have to get people back into that centered space. If they're, and you said the magical words, if they're willing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because sometimes, and this is something that's really prevalent when we're looking at helping folks with hypnosis, is that sometimes having an issue, a medical condition or a disease, kind of becomes the identity. And if that's the way the
Mm,
person who didn't get needs met in other ways in their lifetime, if they're finally getting their needs met, they may not want to do away with it, because they're
yeah.
finally getting what they really needed all along.
Validation.
Validation. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah. So it's, I think this is way more profound, and there's so many layers to this. And the hard part is, maybe most people they feel like they're being judged if somebody comes, and that's why I said we always kind of come back to, "Oh, you're not dealing with something emotionally or something mentally." They may not be, but we have to stop judging them about it. You know what I'm saying? That's for
Right.
them. That's for them to be ready to do, and they'll seek out the right professional when they're ready to do that, or the right
Yeah.
the right kind of mentor or
Mhm.
healer or provider when they're ready to do that on their terms. And that's okay. Right? That's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So anyway.
I think it's worth mentioning too, continuity of care. We do have
Yeah.
several people that go back and forth between the
Mhm.
two of us.
Absolutely.
I work with a naturopathic doctor that will send people over. Sometimes we just need a team, a
Yeah, we do.
physical team to
We do.
work with us,
And
right?
there's overlap, and yet at the same time we're each bringing something a little
Absolutely.
different, something just slightly
Hmm.
different to the mix, because you never know what approach or what word or what touch or what movement is going to be the
Hmm.
thing that reaches that person. They may
That's
not
right.
even know, right? They may not know.
Sometimes they don't know. So I want to continue to say that our pain is a messenger.
Absolutely.
And when we listen to the message, that's the place of healing, right? The pain may never go away. You may always have chronic pain. You may always have an illness, a diagnosis, a reason that you don't feel well.
Mhm.
But when we stop in that place and say, yes, I have pain right here. And we ask it, what do you need? What's your message? That's a place where people don't usually stop at. They just say, I have pain. I want to
Right.
take some Advil. I want to take some narcotics. I just want the pain to be gone.
Right.
And we have had another episode where we did talk about pain.
Mhm.
We talked about our own pain. Today we're talking about pain with, you might call them patients. I call them clients.
Mhm.
Sometimes they're regular people that come all the time. They may not ever get rid of that pain,
Never. Mhm.
but I'm absolutely going to bring them to a place of peace with it.
Well, and
Right?
I think that's the point. It's the learning. If the pain doesn't, if it doesn't completely vanish,
Mhm.
helping them to understand the tools in their own power dynamic with
Yes.
it,
Yes.
so that how they can manipulate that pain or how they can alter the way they interact with that pain so that it becomes manageable. It's a tool that's manageable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about trauma a little bit.
Oh, everybody's find me one person who doesn't have some.
We all have
We
some
all
type.
have it. Yeah, we
We
do,
all
for
have
sure.
trauma.
Mhm.
So during this episode, if you want to grab a pen and a paper, this would be a good place to push pause or to come back to the space. I'm going to give you 13 feelings that can show up in the body and 13 attitudes or different kinds of ways of identifying what's happening in your spiritual life.
Mhm.
This comes from a chart from a book. I didn't make this one up, but I use it often because I find it really helpful. I find it to be revealing. Okay. So when we're feeling normal, right? The attitude or the thing that we're experiencing with that is pleasant. Number two, if we're feeling a little tired, we might be feeling a little sensitive,
Mhm.
right? If we're feeling a little sensitive, we might be a little moody, right? If there's itching going on, might be feeling a little touchy, right? That's what could show up. If you have crawling, like crawling on your skin, you might be feeling disagreeable, right? And not a lot of people will always agree with this because it might not resonate or they might just not want to see that, right? If we have something that is feeling tenderness, we might be feeling grouchy. If there is stiffness or soreness, that could be anger. If there's like just something that's just aching, it's just absolutely miserable. If there is what you would describe as pain, the attitude of that is offensive. Number 11, tingling. If you have tingling in something, that's a big red flag for both Dr.LA and I. This is an attitude of this is horrid. Tingling is just horrid. If there's numbness, it's depressed. Okay. And the last one is feelings of death. The attitude is submissive. So this comes from a book called The Language of the Cells. The language of the cells is this: your cells need breath, they need nutrients, they need movement, they need hydration. As you go from normal health all the way down to tired and pain and tingling and numbness, your cells have been closing that whole entire time. When you come to me or you come to Dr. LA, one of the very first things we're going to have you do is breathe,
Mhm.
right? It's the very first thing we do when we come earthbound is take that big breath, right? We're taking our very first breath. Well, all of our cells are waking up and taking that breath as well. So some of the tools that I use in here in my office and in my practice are essential oils. I use plants. I use sound medicine or sound as medicine.
Mhm.
I have a drum. I have some singing bowls. I have some chimes. All different kinds of metal make really beautiful sounds. All of those will begin. If you can see me on YouTube, they begin to shake the cells open so that we can come back to balance. We can come back to what might be closer to normal, closer to a more pleasant feeling, right? So we're using all of those very basic things. We're using our breath, we're using sound, we're using plants. We're going to use the sun, the moon. We're going to use our own discipline to help our cells to vibrate. So if we could see ourselves as one big cell, and what do I need? I'm feeling depressed. I'm feeling offended by everything. I'm feeling miserable. This is a little chart that we can use to say where our spirit is at, where our cells are at. What is our body doing? Tells us what our spirit is doing. So if we can identify where and how we're feeling it, then we can identify what's going on in our spirit. I say all of that to come to this one point, that if we can bring our spirit and our body together, then we're walking on purpose.
Mhm.
We're walking in our purpose, on our purpose, right? All of the pain that I have experienced in my life is always teaching me something. It might be it's time to slow down, it's time to stretch, it's time to take a day off, it's time to not do that thing again, right? When I have people come in and they say, I have this pain, I've had it for this many years, the very first thing I'm going to ask is, how do you know that? Tell me about it. Where do you feel it? How is it showing up in your life? What is it preventing? What is it giving you? When I was a young mother with raising 4 kids, um, I used to have migraines, and I would take a 15-minute break. I'd just go in my room and I told my family I had a headache, right? I didn't really have a headache, but I wasn't able to say, I need 15 minutes of transition
Yeah.
before dinner, right? I need to come back to center and come back to a feeling of being in my own body before I can give to you. Now I can say, give me 15 minutes, I'll be with you in a few. But I made up the whole headache thing because that's what I needed to do to feel like I could get something.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me. I mean, even if you want to take it another step farther, if you look at, so when we're talking about, with cells, every cell has an energy cycle in it. Most of us, and if you're in high school, remember high school biology, whenever that was for you, something called the Krebs cycle or the tricarboxylic acid cycle, the TCA cycle. It's the same thing. But that's how the cells move to build. It cleans the cell out of junk, trash. It takes the trash out, but it also builds something called ATP, which is energy.
Yeah.
And actually, science, very cool in the last 5 years, has been able to prove that you can get a photon of light with as these cells move to build that TCA cycle, to build those energies with ATP. You can actually get a little photon of light from that. So what does that say about energy right there? So
Yeah.
it is energy. So that whole vibration piece of it creates cavitation in that cell, kind of like a submarine does underwater with sonar, right? If it starts to wiggle in the water, everybody can hear it. It's kind of the same thing, but it speeds the cells up. So a lot of the interventions, I do clinically are designed to do that. Some of the ones you do are designed to do that exact. It's the same.
Yeah.
But that's where this whole idea of vibration comes in, and these tones that will create waveforms. And then when it touches the physical densities of the body, it changes it.
Mhm.
And so that's why people do come in. And a lot of times if they're coming in, and I hear this all the time. Now you're going to hear this because you're an LMT, but we get this all the time in the clinic too. And it's like, oh, I really just love the soft tissue. Mostly because people need to feel connected. They need to have hands on them, and they
Yes.
need to know that someone can feel what their body is holding, and also that we're able to help them, to talk them through it. I also spend a lot of time having, and this may happen with you too, conversation as you're
Yep.
going through this process, because
Mhm.
it's no different than the psychologist's couch. It's the same thing, because people need to work through all of this stuff. And a lot of time it's letting that stuff go and making, and help it. That'll start to opens the mind a little bit. It opens the heart a little bit, so that people can say, okay, I finally feel like I'm in a safe place. I had a
Mhm.
really crappy day. My body is wearing my crappy day. And that's a lot of times what the physique does. The physical body will wear all the stress, whether it's, and yes, there's some physical stress in our days. There are physical things that
Mhm.
we do that create a stress, but most of the stress we experience is either emotional or mental. And yet the body wears it, because we tense and we tighten, because the subconscious mind goes, oh, we have to be secure, and we have to be strong. So let's hold our heads up, even though we want to fall over because we're tired, or any of those other things.
I think that was part of the point of my story too, is
Yeah,
being tired from working all day, to give myself permission to have a few minutes, right?
right.
Now,
Exactly.
now I
Absolutely.
have that language, but I didn't have that language always.
Well, I think based on, I mean, you're a little bit younger than I am, not a lot, but a little. And I think
Tiny.
the era we grew up in, the messaging was always
Keep
do,
going. Keep
work.
going. Yeah.
In order to find value, you must do, you must produce, you must work.
Yeah.
In order to feel
Yeah.
good about yourself, you must do, you must produce, you must work. We're beginning, these younger generations actually have a more healthy mindset about that. Somewhere in the middle, we're going to balance this out to where we
Yeah.
realize that this idea of balance it's absolutely necessary to maintain health, wellness, creativity, um, and
Space.
it's absolutely, I
Creating
mean,
space for healing.
absolutely. It's finding that now. And so now, everybody should get in the habit of saying, something, I can't do this right now, but give me a little bit of time, give me 30 minutes, give me
Mhm.
an hour. I can do it tomorrow,
Yeah.
whatever. Take your time
Or
when you need it.
or
Don't
even saying, I won't do this right now.
Right. Don't you don't, this idea of sacrificing your
Mhm.
needs for the sake of others. Sometimes we do that, and I'm speaking about myself. Sometimes we spend a lifetime doing that because we think that if we show love that way, that others are going to love us back in return. That is not
Right.
always the case,
Right.
because some people are just not like that.
Right.
Right? And that's okay. They're allowed to be not like that.
Yep.
But it's a lot of it's just it's just these habitual behaviors we do that are all based in this notion of I need to sacrifice myself for the greater good. And that's not always the case. I go back to the airline thing with the oxygen mask. If you're not oxygenated, you're not going to be able to realize how to
Yep.
put it on someone else, right? So
Yep.
do it for yourself first. And it's a really smart thing to understand. Sometimes you just need permission to let that tension go and give yourself whatever it is that you need, whether that is a massage, or it's a soak in the hot tub, or a hot bath, or a nice shower, or just 10 minutes playing a video game because you just need to not focus on other people,
Right.
or reading a
Right.
book, or listening to music, whatever it is for you.
I have this experience of clients that have been their whole life, like we're talking about our age group and older specifically, where we did just keep going through the pain and we didn't pay attention to it. Guess what? It's going to catch up to you.
Oh yeah.
It's going to come back and say, here I am again. Here's that same pain that you experienced when you were 15 and you ignored it. And now it's showing up and now you're getting physical therapy for it.
Hmm.
Right. Pardon. So let's stop and let's pay attention and let's find practitioners. Let's find healers. Let's find the people in our communities that can help us. And I used to have this friend, I'd say, my gerbil wheel is spinning, and she would stick her finger in it so I could jump off, right? Let's find people that can do that for us. And that's why we're doing some of the interviews that we're doing. So people that are authentic and true to helping us to recover, helping us to integrate, helping us to find out, is there a message in the pain?
Mm-hmm.
Many people will leave this planet still in pain. There's still a message in it.
Sure.
There's still some learning. There is still some reason for it. There's a saying that goes around, oh, I got saved by spirit saved me from that. Well, what about the person next to you that didn't get saved? Did they not
Right.
have spirit?
Right.
I completely despise that kind of saying and that kind of thinking, because no one person is better than the other.
No.
We're all important and we all have a path, and maybe our path is painful.
Well, it's true. It's funny you bring that up. I mean, this week, one of the things I've been listening in on are just some different discussions and different viewpoints regarding the wounded healer. Chiron is known as the wounded healer, but it's very common for those of us who do healing work with others. We are, for people to understand that are receiving that healing work from us, that we aren't doing it and we're not able to help them and move through it because we're better than they are. It's because we've been through some of the same stuff.
Right.
The wounded healer constantly, that's where the learning comes from, the emotional learning, the spiritual learning, the mental learning, and I would argue even the physical learning, like reprocessing and reprogramming those body behaviors that get you into trouble. It's because the healer is usually wounded in some way as well. And that's what makes them a better healer, not because they're better or because they're exempt from pain. And I think that's a misnomer. And some of that is an attitude that's been created in Western medicine as well, because it's that sort of authoritarian viewpoint of, oh, well, let me do this. You need this pill and this and this and this will heal you. And this sort of some of the gaslighting we're starting to hear about, where people don't leave, because I think sometimes in those roles, and I went through it too, you're kind of programmed based on how the license is and all this kind of stuff, that you are not allowed to have failings. You are an authoritarian and blah, 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 blah. And I'm just instinctively, I mean, and I'm an Aries. I'm capable of doing that if I want to. But I realized a long time ago that that's not how I work. I work with people and they have a better response to me because I just accept everybody for exactly who they are and how they are. And I try to do it from an empathy standpoint, as well as knowledge, the way I teach them. Right.
Well, well, we have the knowledge. We also have the wisdom. We have the scars from the wounds.
Many.
Right? So many, right?
Oh,
so not only can we relate to you from experience, but also relating to you from an educated point of view, like a teacher, right? I have charts on my wall over there, and I bring people to the charts and say, these are the muscles, this is where you're hurting, but look what's above that.
Right.
And look what's below that. And most of them, they say, I had no idea. I said, yes, everything moves together. Everything is related. And that goes with life too. Everything is related. Everything that is happening in your life is related to the other.
I know.
It's teaching us something, right?
Yeah. I give anatomy lessons every day.
I love anatomy so much. And to be able to put it into, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, no, I mean, it's people just don't, those of us that love anatomy end up doing these kinds of roles. Those that don't love anatomy forgot it a long time ago and have no idea how their body works. It's just the way it goes,
Yeah.
but it's
Well, there's a spirit to each body part. There's a
absolutely
spirit to each organ. And so when we learn about those things through our own experience or through a teaching, through an elder, through a book, I love books. See, I have a few back
oh
here.
yeah,
When we can take that and turn it into wisdom and share that with someone else, you may be offering them a plate of healing that no one had offered them before.
right,
Like
yeah,
instead of taking a pain medicine, I'm going to sit with my pain and find out what I need first.
right.
If I can't get it, if I can't solve it, then I'll reach out to someone like you or to my naturopath. And then maybe someone might say, take some medicine, right? But I always try herbs first because nature does provide all of the things that we need.
Well, they were the
Uh,
first medicines.
they're the only medicines,
Yeah,
right?
right. Now, well, and I mean, even in the pharmaceutical industry initially, it was plant medicine
Right,
until they figured out how to do it synthetically. And now
right,
it's not plant medicine. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I also think that some of those, if we can go back to our plant medicines, they can feed our cells.
Hmm.
And some of the bypassing that we're talking about is, and I'll just throw naproxen out there, right?
Hmm.
Uh, it's a beautiful pill. It will take away your pain. It's an
It will take away
anti-inflammatory. But guess what? The issue's still there, right?
yeah, it definitely can be. It just takes away the inflammation that's being generated from whatever the physical impairment or
Right,
energetic impairment is. That's absolutely true.
right. Yep,
And in the
absolutely.
process, if you keep taking it, like I hear, I know people, it's like, oh, I take Tylenol today. Oh, I did this and this. Well, continuing just to take it over and over and over again,
Hmm.
your body doesn't respond as well over time. It starts to
Right,
to do something called accommodating to it. And that's also what happens with opiates. And so that's why opiates are such a real problem at times for people. They didn't intend to
not feel pain.
get strung out on opiates. It's just that
Hmm.
it did a good job taking it, and so they just persisted in taking them because it did sort of dampen the pain on the nerve endings because that's what it does is it
Right,
works on nerve endings, C fibers, right? The nociceptors. And um but after a while the body gets used to it. And
right.
so um it then we struggle, and then it becomes a problem because now your body really really wants it or needs it. And that's sort of the physical or the physiological basis of when addictions and things like that happen. It's just because,
Hmm.
and it's nobody's fault. It's just you were trying to manage your pain. You said something interesting though. You were just a few minutes ago when we were talking about how we bypass things, and I think that's important. I was reading an article called by someone named Jennifer Hellwing, and it says, "Why do we resist healing?" And one of the things that was talking about is if we sit in the pain and trying to figure out what it needs or whatever,
Hmm.
where we have to get to that point, if we're willing to go within and do that process, or are we just going to circumvent it and work around it because we're not quite ready to deal with it? And that's not saying you're being a bad person if you go, no, I don't want to deal with it right now. I'd rather do that. That's not what we're
Hmm.
saying. It's just being an awareness that sometimes as humans, that's what we do because we're not quite ready to deal with it. And some of the things that she said is that sometimes people resist healing because they're afraid to face the monsters under the bed
Mm.
because it might be too much to deal with.
Yeah, yeah,
They're very traumatized and they want to avoid re-experiencing the trauma.
right.
Also very valid. They believe that they're just fine. Now, some of that is the bypassing, right? Because we're like, oh no, everything's good, everything's good. Meanwhile, you get the right trigger and all of a sudden things are not so good, right? Or that they believe that they've been healing their whole lives and that they're done and they just want to be done with that. And all of those are okay. I mean, they're all non-judgment here. They're all okay answers. It happens to all of us at any given
Hmm.
time. Um, but that whole idea of bypassing, sometimes pain persists because we are bypassing. and we'll like, oh, I would rather just meditate more or um, go to a gong meditation or a sound bath or things like that versus actually really truly going within and asking the self the hard questions or choosing to work with a professional person who can work with the mental and emotional bodies and
Mhm.
help ask those hard questions, you know? So sometimes we do that and we keep seeking the same external healing over and over again, and it doesn't heal because we haven't really addressed the internal component of what it means to heal.
Right.
And that's okay. I mean, to each his own. Like I said, there's no judgment here. But sometimes that's why it's hard to heal some of this stuff because there's just little bits and pieces that haven't been addressed, or maybe you just weren't ready to address.
Let me ask you this, because you're
Mhm.
really making me think critically about some of the therapies that you and I offer, which is
Mhm.
one of them that we both offer is sound healing.
Yep.
And I know you do that on a regular basis. I do that with clients as well, especially if they come in and they're a little bit scattered and they don't really know what they want or what they need. Some sound healing can bring them back to center. So it's making me think that we'll just use sound healing as an example. Let's say I have a broken bone, and we
Mhm.
know that sound healing can help bone reform, right? Those cells will move and they will heal. One session might not do it.
No, one
If
session for that, one session won't do it. I mean,
so,
unless it's
so
miraculous, bone is not going to knit in an
right.
hour session or 2 hour session. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I bring up bones because memories get stuck in our cells, right? In our bones.
Absolutely they do. They get stuck in
So
everything. Yeah.
if when we have traumas that maybe they're pre-verbal traumas,
Mhm.
maybe we're not able to speak about them, you definitely don't want to re-experience them, but a consistent therapy like sound healing can help you to bring you to that place of it's going to heal slowly, but it's always getting a little better,
Right.
right?
Right.
And when we talk about bypassing, we're not saying, well, I'm not saying, I want you to be triggered. I want you to
No,
re-experience
me
it.
either.
I
Yeah.
want you to tell me all the details. I don't want any of that. I just want to see that either your pain is decreasing, or you're getting tools to handle it, or you're not relying on anything outside yourself.
Right.
So that's why we teach people about the muscular system. That's why we teach them about acupressure. That's why we teach them about sound healing. That's why we teach them about massage, right?
Mhm.
We teach them the anatomy. This is what
Well,
your body is doing.
yeah,
This is what you're.
and even the movement stuff that we do in
Uh-huh.
PT, whether it's I mean, we call it therapeutic exercise, but it's really more than that. It's actually
Mhm.
it's sort of neuromuscular re-education. We're re-educating the body on how to move correctly. And so that's another way of doing it too, is getting those correct
Mhm.
movement patterns so the body can have a way of reframing. You know, if you always move in that, like if you're always walking and you always have a little bit of a limp, and so that's going to be more fatiguing. The more you walk, the tireder you're going to get because your gait pattern's not efficient. Your walking isn't very efficient and it's not
Right.
very effective. But if we can address the specific muscles and joints that are involved in that, and the other tissues, the neuromuscular interface and things like that, and begin to re-educate the body and teach it a different way, then
Uh-huh.
your brain can reframe it and go, oh, well, if I move like this, oh yeah, that's really different. And sometimes that
Exactly.
can do it because you start walking a path that's just slightly different, and then that blows your mind and opens up for all kinds of great things to happen.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So that is such a great point
Mhm.
to exactly what I'm saying is the neuromuscular re-education, and then we have the spiritual re-education,
Absolutely.
which is what the sound healing is doing, right?
Mhm.
Which is what the essential oils are doing with the breath work, with the mindfulness.
Mhm.
It's all changing those brain patterns that we
Mhm.
have of how we feel about things, right?
Absolutely.
Without re-experiencing the trauma. I really want
Absolutely.
to emphasize that I never, ever, ever ask people, tell me about the trauma. No, just tell me where it's at in your body.
Mhm.
Tell me what color it is. Don't go into the memory of it. Don't
Right.
recall, right? So I think it's really important to stress that we're not saying that bypassing is that, right?
Oh, bypassing
It-
is definitely not that. Yeah.
we do not take you back into your trauma. So bypassing is when you don't want to deal with it, when you know it, but you don't want to deal with it.
Mhm.
That's different. That's
Right.
more like bypassing.
It is.
But
And it's
if
just a choice. Yeah.
but if we have to take sound healing every day, or
Mhm.
we're doing music therapy, that's helping the cells to remember how to be whole,
It is. Yeah.
how to be peaceful,
And that's
right?
and that's true also with meditation,
Mhm.
hypnosis, or anything like that where you're working on the subconscious, is that you're basically training. Think of it as exercise for the way energy moves up and down the neurons in your brain, and the way the segments of your brain actually start to understand different things and become aware. You're just retraining things so
Mhm.
that it can be more effective and more efficient. We don't need to bring up the mitigating circumstances that started you on the path. Now,
Right,
and sometimes, unfortunately, in my world, it does happen where I have to work on somebody who has basically permanent injury due to trauma
right,
that won't change. But how we handle that is by finding new ways to help this person to be independent, to voice themselves, to find their way of being that still exemplifies them, but within the circumstances that the body has to deal with at that point. But it's still
right,
all meant to be independent and being independent, being positive, um, and being able to live purposefully.
right,
Um, without necessarily bringing up the trauma. But yeah.
right. Beautiful. Think I could talk about my class now?
Oh, yes. Talk about your
Let's do it.
class.
Let's do it. When I was given this mission, this purpose, this vision that I was given that I talked about in one of the very first episodes of the Love and Lightning podcast, I talked about this vision that I was giving, that I was supposed to touch people in a holy, sacred, reverent way. Well, then I've been doing this work for 23 years. I've been touching people. Sometimes I touch them with pretty cloths. Sometimes it's my hands. Sometimes it's the drum, right?
Mhm.
Um, you can touch people with your words, with your intention, with your heart. So in 2020, we had that pandemic and it was a global shutdown, right? I'm sure everyone remembers that. But not only that, on a very personal level, our governor shut down all massage practitioners. We weren't allowed to touch anyone because we're not deemed medical, right?
Essential. Essential.
Essential.
Yeah. That was a
So
lovely word.
I was really pissed off, but I wasn't pissed off at the government. I wasn't pissed off at uh, the, the the governor, the person that said you have to shut down. I was really angry with my spirit team. I was really angry with, I had been given this vision that said, do this work. And now I'm like, what am I going to do now? So I was pretty mad. When we get to that very emotional place, I find that it can bring me closer to spirit. Not that I want to get mad on purpose, but I was mad. And so I sat down to do my prayers and to connect to my spirit and say, okay, I can't do this work now. I'm feeling useless. They said, I got you. Don't worry. We have plans for you. So I started writing and I wrote a class. And when I looked at this the next day, it's beautiful. It's very flowy and it put down in words all of the things that I do with people. And there's 7 different ceremonies that I share in this class. It's called Intentional Touch. And I share it by going to your state, or you can come to me to do this. But basically, it is understanding the primal need for healthy touch. One of the things we weren't allowed to do during the pandemic, and even in our own homes, was to touch each other. We had to stay 6 feet away from one another. So if you know energy medicine, 6 feet gets you out of people's heart space, the very space that we want to be in. That's at about 6 feet, the etherical body is the heart. And so when we step out of the heart space of one another, oh, it's going to make me cry. When we step out of that heart space, we no longer have a connection to one another.
Right.
So in this class, I'm going to teach you about those layers of the energetic and the physical body, teach you how to learn to trust your instincts, creating an intentional space for allowing people to heal, an intentional space for listening, creating a serene environment so that people will trust the space that you're in with your intention. It's not a massage class, but you do get to touch one another. And it's touching with an intention of a light touch. There's a general anatomy in there. We do reading the signs of the body, where people's eyes go, can tell you, maybe how they're thinking, if they're thinking from a higher perspective or an earthly perspective, focusing on pain relief. That's what this class is for. It's basically intentionally learning to hold a sacred space of allowing the body to unfold. So I've been teaching this class since 21. I'm ready to take it out there. I'm being my own cheerleader right now. It's a really beautiful class. There are 2 very special ceremonies in there that I got permission from my mentor to put in there. One of them is a foot ceremony. It's amazing. Talk about connecting to water and to plants and connecting to another human, heart to heart, right? To sit at the feet of another person is one of the most holy places that you can sit. And I've been doing that my whole entire life. So we've put this in a class. It's a 2-day class. It's 14 hours. It's not for continuing education. It's not, you don't have to have any education to do this. You just have to have a desire to want to connect with other humans. So that's my little spill on my intentional touch class, so that I could continue walking the medicine, not only in a good way, but in a healthy way, to be able to teach people the way that I see the body and the way that I see the spirit and how to bring those 2 together. So,
And we'll have all the details for this class down below.
Yeah. I have a class planned in Colorado in June. There'll be classes here in Mesa. I'm planning 2 classes in 2 different parts of California for the maybe July and August. We'll put some dates out there. There's a website that you can look at that has a better and deeper description of the class. I'm keeping the price low. It's just $250. That's a good price point.
Yeah, for 14 hours. Yeah.
For 14 hours. Yeah. Yeah. So you take away 7 ceremonies, 7 ways to help people to heal. I teach you how to do it on the floor, on a massage table, and in a chair, because not everyone is going to be able to lie down. Not everyone can stand, right? Really created this for a beautiful way of caregiving for another person and how to reconnect, heart to heart, human to human, right? So I put in this medicine, the spiritual path is what I call the medicine. So yeah, thanks.
That's awesome. So if you want to learn what it feels like to experience being part of the healing process with another person, this is your chance.
Yep.
And it's awesome.
It's really, really beautiful work. I love doing it. I love teaching. I think I'm just a natural born teacher.
Yeah.
It just comes very natural to learn something and then to be able to share it in a way that people can understand.
Yeah.
Whether you are making references to a fishing line or lightning, right?
Or lightning. Yeah.
Or lightning, yeah. I think one thing we didn't really go over very much is why the body might reject healing.
Well, that's those those four things we were talking about is why you might reject healing. Things to consider are if that condition that you have or that pain that you have, actually you feel like that supports you in a way so that you can receive other things. Also, it might be because you simply aren't ready to address that pain. But I think we talked about why we don't have to bring the trauma back. And you can still begin to get healing if that's really, sometimes it's because you're just not ready to do the whole thing, but you're willing to do little increments.
Do you think
Sometimes,
that
sometimes it's scary, I think, to heal because
yeah,
especially if it's something you've had for a really long time,
it's
to be with,
comfortable?
yeah, to be without it is
Mm-hmm.
scary because it means you've changed. And these are not conscious thoughts people go through. This is all subconscious information, right?
Right.
Like we're not thinking about this. This is just something your either your spirit is talking to you about or your subconscious mind is talking to you about. Um, Sometimes people are afraid that if they're freed of the pain, then it means that they have to make other larger changes as well.
Mm,
And
mm,
that's hard sometimes.
yeah.
That can be a very hard thing in many ways, right?
In my experience, the other thing that why we might reject a healing is that that's our path.
Yeah, exactly.
That is our
If
path.
you came to schoolroom earth, if you incarnated with the express purpose of learning something through this pain, then your spirit isn't going to want to let that go until you fully learned whatever it is that you set out to
Mhm.
learn.
Yeah.
And that's a very real thing. And we don't I hear a lot of people talk about, that you come to learn lessons and things like that. And I think for so much of humanity still, we're still kind of locked into that whole three-dimensional mindset of right and wrong, good or bad. We haven't quite realized that even when things are perceived as bad or as wrong, somebody's learning a lesson from that.
Mhm.
And it may be a horrible lesson, but maybe they signed up to learn that lesson.
Yeah.
And
We
that's
have
where
to
suspending,
receive that. Yeah, to
yeah, and that's where,
receive that,
mhm,
to accept it, to not
yeah,
judge
to
people.
suspend the judgment of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think that's um, there's for any of you that are really interested in looking at ideas about suspending judgment, check out Regina Meredith's. She did a really beautiful thing with her guides a few weeks ago, talking about how to suspend judgment on her either reginameredith.com or her YouTube channel. And it's a really interesting, I found it to be very beautifully presented. It was quite nice. I think it's about 35 or 40 minutes. So it's not super long, but it was really beautiful about how to suspend judgment, that
Mm,
the way we're all going to heal this earth and us with it is to get out of that whole judgment thing. That's the
right.
thing that's holding, one of the things that's holding us back right now as humanity.
Yep.
Anything else you want to throw in?
Yes, grab a pen and paper again. I'm going to give you a few little prompts. I've used them throughout the episode, but I want to give them to you so you can write them down. If you are experiencing pain, chronic pain, illness, a change, a transition, write these down and see if you can do a little discovery session for yourself. What am I learning through or from this pain? What am I learning through or from this pain? What is the message? What is the message? And then ask yourself, how do I feel? How do I feel? And that's not how do I feel, good, bad, sad. It's how do I feel? How am I interpreting this pain? So, how do I feel? Where do I feel? Where do I feel? And what do I feel? That last one is what do I feel? I'll give you an example. What am I learning through or from this pain? My pain is teaching me that I need to slow down. What's the message? Slow down. How do I feel it? Well, I feel pretty agitated right now, right? Where do I feel it? I feel it in my legs. And what do I feel? I feel angry, right? So those are just some examples of some little prompts that you can ask yourself. Those answers where I was just making them up. I really don't have any leg pain today.
And one of the things too, something again, this is part of hypnosis training and things like that. But if you feel like you might be resisting healing, one question you can ask yourself is, what does this pain do for me? And then the second question is, how would my life change if I no longer had this pain? And sometimes that can give you the insight that you're really looking for. It doesn't mean you have to act on it by any means, but it might make you go, oh, I didn't think about it like that. And that's
Right,
okay, because all this is
right.
learning. And then one other thing I just thought of while you were talking through some of that. If you're somebody that has a longstanding pain issue that you've been seeking help for, and it's not getting better, sometimes you may be going to, a bunch of different types of providers so that you can learn different aspects of things from them all along the way. And it's just sort of part of your path to get you to the final provider who might be able to help you cross the threshold and rid yourself of the pain. So just think of it that way. Sometimes we're meant to learn stuff like little tidbits of things, or sometimes we interact with one person and then that may turn into, oh, you should go see this person or you should see this person. And then when you get there, it's like, oh, I wish I'd just come to see you from the beginning. But the truth is, if you had, you might not have gotten what you needed because you needed all those little bits and pieces that everybody else gave you to.
Right.
It's a big learning process.
Yeah.
That's how we learn about our bodies in general and about how we feel about them.
Right.
Right? So
And sometimes pain is a redirection so we can find our true essence, our true
absolutely.
path.
That's
Yep.
beautiful. Yeah, that's
To,
beautiful. That's a beautiful way to phrase it. Absolutely.
to help us to remember our divinity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
a redirection of, yeah, that's not working for me. So let's go here. So thank you so much for the chat today.
Oh yeah, this was a really good one. And
Yeah.
I hope that you guys are that are listening in or watching us are really getting topics that makes some sense for you, or that start to speak to you. If there's other topics that you really want us to cover, please just send us an email at loveandlightningpodcast@gmail.com and just say, I'd really like, for you guys to talk about this, that, or the other. And we'll see what we can do. If it's a topic we can address, or if it's a topic we need to find a guest who can come on and address it for us. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, cause we would really like to be able to share what people are trying to understand and what they want to hear. So we're always grateful for more information and feedback and things like that too. It's just really helpful to us because we're learning how to do this.
We are.
We're learning how to do this. We're used to teaching in classrooms or one-on-one and with clients and things like that. And so now we're talking through microphones and wearing headphones.
I have pink ones.
Yeah, yours are infinitely better than mine.
Yeah. I
Mine are
wanted
the
to
ugly.
mention I have a couple of videos that teaching videos that I've done. If you're already a body worker or you're just interested in anatomy and spirit and how it works together, you can go to my scheduler, pardon, and there's a few of them on there. The sacrum and the soul. I do some abdominal work, and then there's a foot reflexology. All three of those sessions are about 90 minutes. I do sell them. They're recorded. I have permission for the people that are in them. But they give you some insight on how I work with the body. but it is not what the intentional touch class is. This is a deeper, more physical based videos that I did to teach people how they can do things a little differently when we're connecting the body and the spirit.
Mhm.
So I do have those for sale as well. So I
Very
really
good.
want to share the work that I do. I may have to retire someday. I may not be able to do this. So really, my intention is to teach as much as I can a different way of thinking about pain, about spirit, about the body, and how we bring those together.
Or sometimes you're like me and you retire once and then you
Come
unretire.
back. I know there's a few people that are glad that you're back.
Thank you. So
uh,
why don't you go ahead and then close the sacred
okay.
circle and
Yes. Holy Creator, thank you so much for the laughter and the wisdom. Thank you for our breath and our voice and our truth. Thank you for the grandmothers that are whispering in my ear. Don't forget to say this. We give you honor and we give you love and all of our well ancestors and all the waters in our body and the waters on the earth. We thank you so much for allowing us to be here at this time to share this good medicine. Ometeo aho, and so it is.
thank you so much. And thank you to all of you that are tuning in. We really appreciate your support with this process. And you're all fabulously beautiful, wonderful people that we would love to have in our circle of like-minded beings. So thanks for joining in with us. And we can't wait to see you again next time with another interesting topic or guest. So we have some interesting things coming up. So be sure to
We
tune in.
do.
Be sure to tune in. And we'll catch you next time. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.